Hi, I'm Alicia Besser. I'm the newish senior pastor at Moody Methodist Church, and welcome to our home. This is our kitchen. We bought my parents' house here in Galveston. We gutted the house and remodeled, so this is our new kitchen, and we're happy to have you here. But before we lived here in Galveston, we moved from the Beaumont area. My husband, Robert Besser, is here with us, and my friend Jennifer is here with us. All of us have lived in that east neck of the woods. Jennifer grew up in Louisiana, and Robert served for 12 years in Beaumont, and I served there for 5 years. So we learned something about Cajun cooking. So I thought I would share with you a few recipes today. And my favorite is shrimp Creole. Creole, that's kind of hard to say, isn't it? Shrimp Creole. It's a tomato-based recipe that I've been working on perfecting since Robert and I started dating, and it's really pretty simple. It combines some tomatoes and the Holy Trinity, which is onion. This is 2 stalks of bell pepper, 2 stalks of celery, and 1 bell pepper. And we're going to saute those up in just a minute. So let's get started. I'm going to take these with me over here. We're going to put 3 tablespoons of butter in a skillet that's got some sides to it. You could cook this in a big, more of a big pot, but I think it's just as easy to use this skillet. A lot of butter goes in this because we're going to saute up all these vegetables. We'll wait just a second. And this is one of those recipes that you can try when companies come into town. You need to cook it beforehand and have it ready. You can throw the shrimp in before. I like to wait until people arrive for the shrimp to go in so they don't get rubbery. The recipe does not call for okra, but we like okra. So in my recipe today, I'm going to add okra. You do what you like. You can make this as spicy or not as spicy. It just depends on what you like. All right, the butter's ready, so we're just gonna saute the onions for a few minutes until they get translucent. There's a difference between the Cajuns and the Creoles. The Creoles were the people that came from the Caribbean. They came over to Louisiana, so we call this a shrimp Creole. That's different than the Cajuns. The Cajuns came from Canada, from Nova Scotia, and they were actually forced out of Nova Scotia, and they came down to the swamp lands of Louisiana. All of them utilized what they could find, and so they were great farmers. That's why we have a lot of vegetables in this dish. And of course, in South Louisiana, you find great seafood. So this is shrimp Creole. And we're lucky here in Galveston to have good shrimp. I'm using frozen shrimp. You go ahead. If you've got fresh shrimp, go right ahead and use that. I'm sure it'll be wonderful. It's just a little easier for me to use the already deveined and peeled and no tail on shrimp. Either way, it's just fine. I think this would be really good with fish as well. If you've got something you caught, some red snapper or some flounder, it'd be a good sauce to pour over it. But we're going to use shrimp today. So one of the advantages to this pan is that it's wide enough that it absorbs all the steam. And you're not steaming your vegetables. They'll still cook nicely. You don't want to boil them. That's not a good idea. This is starting to come to a good place. So I'm going to give it a little pinch of salt. How much? It's just a pinch. We're going to salt to taste. I don't like to use too much salt, so I sort of salt as I go. And we're going to do a couple of turns of the black pepper, just a little bit right now. We can always add more. We'll give that a little stir. And then it would not be Louisiana cooking, right, if we didn't use some garlic. Now, you may want to use a fancy garlic press. This calls for 4 cloves of garlic. That's great. Use your garlic press. It just needs to be fine. You don't want a big clump of garlic. So I just use this little jar of garlic. Works for me and my cooking. And for me, I use a tablespoon per clove. I mean, a teaspoon. Don't do a tablespoon. That would be terrible. That'd be just way too much garlic. But I use a teaspoon. So that's 1. Here's 2. Here's 3. Here's 4. There we go. And I'm going to quickly stir this because I don't want the garlic to burn. We want to stir this quickly. Just get it moving in your pan. Keep it moving. We'll be just fine. This is the hardest part of the whole dish, is not burning the garlic, but starting to get it fragrant. It is looking good. Let me get my trusty recipe that really, I found this recipe on the internet. I was looking for a simple Creole recipe, and this one was just great. Now, what we're gonna do, so we don't burn the garlic, we're gonna go ahead and add our tomatoes. This is just one, it's 15-ounce can of crushed tomatoes. You may like a lot of chunks of tomato. Go ahead and get the 15-ounce diced tomatoes. It doesn't matter. This recipe calls for crushed. Use what you like. That's what I do. Adapt it the way you like it. Let's stir this up a little bit. Woo! I'm going to turn the fire down. Turn that down to medium, or I'm going to be wearing the tomato sauce. So I didn't grow up with Cajun food at all. When I was living here in Galveston, it was just regular seafood. And then I moved off to A&M and lived in Houston for a while in East Texas. So when I moved to Beaumont, I had to learn to eat Cajun food, a little bit more spice than I was used to, but you quickly adapt. And this has become one of my favorites. Later on, I'm gonna make one of the things I thought I would never like, but I absolutely love, and that's boudin balls, which is a sausage ball. And it's really tasty, and it's got a kick. It's got a kick. All right, we are good with the tomatoes. We're gonna add some spices to it. We're gonna add 1 tablespoon of paprika, which I happen to have out here. So paprika, this is not smoked paprika. If that's what you've got, use it. This is just regular old paprika. Let's see if my measuring, oh, it will. Okay, good. So 1 tablespoon of paprika, okay? We'll set that to the side. Then we're gonna add, sorry, my back is to you. We're gonna add 2 teaspoons of dried thyme. You'll find a lot of thyme and oregano in Cajun cooking. 1 teaspoon, right? 2 teaspoons. 2 teaspoons of, let's see if I can get this. 2 teaspoons of thyme. I'm not using fresh, I'm using dried. I'm not sure, we've started our herb garden outside, but it's not ready yet, and I'm not sure if we have time, but that's okay. And then we need oregano, 2 teaspoons of oregano. There we go. There we go. Here we are, 2 teaspoons of oregano. Now we're gonna make it, woo! We're gonna make it a little bit spicy. It calls for 1 teaspoon of cayenne. And because I am being good, I'm gonna follow this recipe. Like I said, I'm not a huge spicy person, so use less. My recipe calls for a whole teaspoon. I'm actually just gonna put a half a teaspoon in, because I'm a wimp and I figure people can add hot sauce to it. So I always have hot sauce on the table for folks. Here we go. Now let's stir it around and let these spices warm up in the tomato sauce, which is gonna help us out a little bit. Yeah, I spent a lot of time going over to Louisiana. We have friends that live in Moss Bluff, and we would go. My husband went to seminary in North Louisiana at Centenary, and so we have lots of Louisiana friends, and I've enjoyed a lot of good Cajun food hanging out with them. So this is a fun recipe. Notice I'm wearing my little Mardi Gras beads in honor of them. Now I think we're coming to the easy part. 1.5 cups of low sodium broth, chicken broth. And believe it or not, this recipe is almost done. That's how easy this is. It needs to cook up a little bit. It all needs to warm up together, but it's almost done. We're gonna, whoops. Okay, we'll stir it around a little bit without making a mess. While we're doing this, I'm gonna go ahead and turn on the back burner because we need some rice. I mean, you can't have a Louisiana dish without some rice. So I'm not gonna use real rice. I'm using bull in a bag. I know that's cheating, but that's how it is in my world. You make up a big pot of rice. Maybe you always have a pot of rice. I have lots of Cajun friends whose mothers always had a pot of rice on the stove. We don't have that here. So we are going to boil some water and make some instant rice, and that'll be just fine. We're gonna add 2 bay leaves to this. Where are my little bay leaves? 2 bay leaves. 1, 2. It's gonna make it easy. Woo, I'm dropping things, that's okay. 2 bay leaves, got the tomatoes. We're gonna add our green onions. So I've got 2 green onions chopped up, both the whites and the greens. We're gonna sprinkle, you don't have to sprinkle all of them in. You might wanna save some for garnish, but I'm okay with just the way it is. We're gonna put 2 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce. This is gonna give it some depth. As some of the fancy chefs say on television, some umami. We're gonna put some Worcestershire sauce. I will tell you, we're gonna taste this, and if it's too tart, we're just gonna add a little squeeze of honey. But that's the way it works. You gotta make it to your taste. All right, we'll stir this up in here as we go around. We want those bay leaves to get incorporated. Let me see what we need next. 1/2 lemon. Okay, we're gonna put 1/2 lemon. I just use one of these lemon squeezers. If you haven't ever figured it out, you put the lemon cut side down on the bottom and then squeeze. So it gives it a little bit of tart, that nice refreshing lemony flavor. Yum. And I'm gonna get my okra and put it in. This is good old pre-cut frozen, you know, $1 in the store bag. But okra is really good for you. And what it does to this recipe that I like is that it thickens up the stew. And you get some more vegetables. So we like okra. If you don't like okra, don't add it. The recipe that I have doesn't call for okra, but I've cooked this enough times that I've started adding it just to give us a little bit more vegetables in our diet. So we're gonna cook this up a little bit. We're gonna let it cook. And we'll come back to it in just a second. Okay, this has been cooking for about 20 minutes. We've got our fancy boil in a bag rice going over here that we're gonna pull off the stove in just a moment. But as I tasted it, I realized that with this okra addition, it needs a little bit more spice. So I just used Tony, what is it, Chachere's seasoning. It's Creole seasoning. You can use Slap Your Mama, whatever you like. And I'm just gonna add another teaspoon. Again, I'm not a super spicy person, so I sort of limit it, but we'll add this because it needs a kick. The other thing is because the sauce has thickened, we need to thin it out just a little bit. So I like to use dry white wine. I'm just gonna use a cup. This is very simple. Gives it a nice background flavor. I'll stir this around. The more you let it cook, notice I haven't put the shrimp in, the more you let it cook, the more the flavors are really gonna develop. That bay leaf is gonna do its job. It's gonna add some really good intense flavors into this, what's basically an okra stew right now. Woo. Okay. I'm going to pull off the rice and be right back. And now the last thing we're going to do, because you can't have shrimp Creole without shrimp. And there's lots of good Gulf shrimp that's out there that's frozen. Pick your favorite, use what you like. I defrosted this and I drained off the water, and I'm just going to add it into this yummy stew. Sometimes when I get large shrimp, that's what this is, I'll chop them up, but tonight I'm just leaving them whole so they look pretty. And I'm gonna stir it around for just a minute. Really is gonna take nothing to cook these shrimp. About a minute. When they start to turn pink, even in this red sauce, you're gonna be able to see that the shrimp are done. Oh, this is gonna be great. This is a great dish to make for company if you know that they like seafood. This is a wonderful dish. I made this one time, the first time I ever made it, I made it for Mother's Day for my mom. Ironically, I had broken my foot a few weeks before, and I was on one of those knee scooters. Y'all ever use one of those? And I came riding down the church walkway, and I flipped over the handlebars. I had to go to the emergency room, but I told my mom, we're going home and eating that shrimp Creole first because it's ready, because I'd worked so hard on it. It was the first time I'd ever made it. And it was years later that I would meet Robert, and I would want to perfect that recipe with him. So I didn't break my arm. That was the good news. I went to the ER, but I did not break my arm. I landed on it, but I didn't break it. The stove is on a real low setting. Mine has numbers, and I'm on about 3.5 because I'm cooking with gas. I like cooking with gas better than electric. When we remodeled this kitchen, we specifically went for gas. When you live in Galveston and you have hurricanes, you need that advantage of gas. This year we discovered that we need the gas stove when there's a freeze. And so we didn't have electricity, but we could self-light our gas stove and cook, and that was rather handy as well. I just like cooking with a gas stove. I can regulate the temperature better. You may know how to use electric. You may have one of those fancy glass tops. That's wonderful. Whatever you like cooking with, that's a great idea. The shrimp is almost done. I told you it didn't take long. I'm gonna give this another second or two to just cook down. Look how pretty that is with all the red and the green and the shrimp. It's just an impressive dish to make. Oh, I should have remembered this. I should have gotten some good garlic bread because you could really dip it into this. That would be wonderful too. I was focused on the main dish. Okay, I'm gonna taste it and see how it is. Isn't that what all good chefs do? They gotta try it out. Put a little bit of rice in. You put as much as you like. I got just a dab, and I need a better spoon than the one I was using. Get a little bit of shrimp and a little bit of okra and a little bit of sauce on there. And I'm gonna try it out. Let's see how it tastes. There's a big old shrimp. It's hot. I'm gonna eat on television. This is terrible, right? Mm-hmm. Now that's good shrimp Creole, and I'll make sure you have the recipe. Now we're back making boudin balls. So boudin balls became one of my favorite things to eat in Beaumont at a place called Tia Juanita's. If you need a good place to eat and you're driving through Beaumont, stop there. Just Google it. There's a couple of locations. And the food's really good. They make huge boudin balls. Today, I'm going to make some little boudin balls, but I'm also going to stuff some jalapenos. So if you like things a little spicy, we're going to try that out as well. Now, you can make your own boudin. Boudin is actually a word that comes from the Greek that means sausage. After doing a little research, I found out that the basic sausage recipe came from Greece. It is a recipe that's filled with pork, and they take all of the pork innards and they grind them up, and they add rice, and of course the Holy Trinity, and some parsley and a bunch of great spices, and it makes a spicy sausage. I could make my own if I wanted to, but I like a good shortcut. And so we use DJ's Boudin sausage. And there's a reason why I use DJ's Boudin. I am not brand loyal on many things, but on this one, I like DJ's. So we use DJ's Boudin because they're friends of ours. I want to invite my husband to come over. This is Robert Besser. Robert served for 12 years at Wesley Beaumont, and that's where we met Zim and Linda Morris. Now, Zim, he's an engineer, and he makes sure that the plants don't explode. That's a good thing. But Linda owns DJ's Boudin, and both of these people are salt of the earth. They are so kind. But Linda's the kind of person that if you're down on your luck and you need a job, she finds out, she's going to hire you, she's going to put you to work. So we want to support a company like that. So that's why we buy DJ's Boudin. We believe in our friends and we believe in their ministry. They do a lot of prison ministry and they try and help people wherever they can. So this is what we use. So someone asked me, where do you buy DJ's? I know that you can buy it at H-E-B. I have not seen it at Kroger's, but sometimes you can even find it at Buc-ee's. It's at a lot of different stores. So look for it in your local grocery store. This is a 2-pound portion, and it's out of the casing. If you want to buy the boudin and it's in the casing, you'll need to take it out of the casing in order to make this recipe. But we're going to make it easy. I'm just going to take half the portion out of this container, just half, which is about this, and I'm going to dump it in my mixing bowl. Because the next thing I need to do is to add 2 eggs to this. The eggs are going to help all of this stick together when we fry it. Make it good and tasty. Then I'm going to use the best tools in the kitchen. I have clean hands, I've washed them, and the best way to mix this together, because it's got so much rice and pork in it with eggs, is just to get in there with your hands, be a kid again, and play. You know what they say, all those fancy chefs will tell you that your best tool in the kitchen is your hands. So I want to make sure this is good and mixed up. Now, boudin came to America by way of the Caribbean. So this is actually a Creole dish. We made Creole food when we were talking about the shrimp Creole, and actually this is a Creole dish as well. All right, that's good and mixed up. Let me wash my hands. So the other thing you need to know, funny thing I learned when I was living in Beaumont, and that is this boudin is a cooked product. That it's already cooked. You don't have to worry. You can eat it right out of the package if you want to. I went to a party and someone told me that they were bringing boudin salad. I thought, oh, it's going to have all kinds of greens, and maybe they fried up the boudin like croutons. No, it was a slab of boudin on a plate with crackers. It's often eaten with ketchup or hot sauce. I thought that was hilarious for a salad. But the reason why we need to cook this is because we've just put 2 raw eggs. I'm going to make up a couple of boudin balls, and then we're going to try and stuff some jalapenos. So all you do, I use just one of these little scoopers, simple, and then roll it in my hand. You can make big boudin balls if you want. You don't have to. This is a simple 2-egg mixture. I added 3 dashes of hot sauce to it. And I'm going to roll my egg in it. And then I've got over here a panko mixture that I've added 2 teaspoons of cayenne pepper, 1 teaspoon of salt too. So it's just panko breadcrumbs to make it good and crunchy. I've rolled in the egg. I'm going to make a total mess because this is not sticking together. And then I'm just gonna roll it in the panko till it's good and covered. And we're gonna set it on our little platter right there. I'll do one more for you since I'm good and messy. And who knows, maybe somebody will wanna try this from my film crew. We add it to the egg. We dump it in the breadcrumbs and get it good and covered, good and crunchy. And there we have simple boudin balls. In just a minute, we're gonna fry them. But let me wash my hands. Okay, so now we're gonna try the jalapenos. And I've learned working with jalapenos, you want to use these lovely latex gloves. If you're allergic to latex, use plastic gloves, whatever you can use, because jalapenos are spicy, at least they're spicy to me. And the inside of it, if lots of people are allergic to the oil in the jalapenos, and it'll make your hands burn. So unless you're used to working with jalapenos, don't fool with them without a glove. All you're gonna do for this, I'll move some of this out of the way to show you. You just take a jalapeno, I bought these at the grocery store, chop off the top, cut it down the middle, and all you're gonna do is kind of cut around. It's like a bell pepper in this way, and you are going to take out this membrane that has the seeds in it. That's all you're gonna do. You wanna make sure you get all the seeds out. So I've got a jalapeno right here. Now, I'm gonna use my trusty scoop. Let's see if this is gonna work. I'm gonna have to use my fingers for sure. And I'm just gonna mush my mixture around. Look, see how nice that looks? Now, we're gonna do the same breading station. We're gonna dunk it in the egg. Kind of using my fingers to help. And then we're going to roll it around, get it good and coated in those breadcrumbs. The green part, it's kind of hard to keep the coating on, but we made it. Look, we've got a stuffed jalapeno. So I'm gonna carefully remove my gloves over here, and we're gonna take this to the stove, and let's try frying it up. So now we're gonna fry up our boudin balls and our jalapeno. I just made a few. You're gonna wanna make this in a big batch. The oil, you heat up to 350 degrees, so you'll need a temperature gauge. And we're just gonna fry this for 3-4 minutes tops, till they're golden brown. This is nothing fancy. If I can get them to go into the pot, it'll help. Okay, and you wanna make sure when you put them in the hot oil that you put them in gently, because you don't want this oil splashing up in your face. You don't wanna crowd the pot, and you don't want to do this quickly. This is an art. I don't fry very often, so this is fun to do this with you. Oh wow, they're really turning. Look at this, they're already ready. Look at this, this is so cool. Look at how cool. Man, God is good. And here we have it, some hot boudin balls. I'm gonna walk over here and sprinkle it with a little bit of salt, because you always sprinkle things with salt when they're hot. It doesn't need a lot, just a little bit, just to make it stick. Well, we have one last dish. This is Brennan's Banana Foster. My mom loves New Orleans, and she and my stepdad went there on their honeymoon, and she kept talking about this Banana Foster recipe. So what do you know? You go online, you can find anything. It's really a simple recipe. It is 4 bananas, so I have 3 cut up. These are just medium. They're not green, and they're not super spotted. They're just kind of medium. You peel them, and I chop it in half, and then chop it in half once again. Not hard at all. I went ahead and I set out the vanilla ice cream to let that get soft, because you need a little vanilla ice cream. Now we're gonna go to the stove. turn the fire on. We've got one stick of butter. I use salted butter because this dish is very sweet and you need a little salt, and I'm gonna add a little more salt. We're gonna let this just melt. I set it out for a few minutes to get soft. That kind of speeds up the process for us. You know Cajun cooking, they're gonna use a lot of butter. We've used a lot of butter in this dish, in our segment, not the dish. This does have a lot of butter. So we're gonna let it melt. I'm gonna get a measuring spoon. Just a little bit of butter here. Melting it down. Soon we're gonna pour the alcohol in and it's all gonna flame up. So butter's just about melted, so we're gonna add the brown sugar. I've got my fire on about high, a little less than the highest setting, but you want to get it good and warm. And then I just keep stirring with this. I don't want the sugar to clump up. I don't want it to burn, but you do want it to dissolve. You're kind of making a caramel, kind of butter and brown sugar. How bad can that be? Okay, while the sugar melts down, ooh, it's starting to get there. I'm gonna add a half a teaspoon of cinnamon. Gives it a little spunk. Ooh, come on, cinnamon, there we go. And I'm just gonna add a dash of vanilla. This is giving the brown sugar some time to melt. Ooh. I don't know about your family, but I find recipes on vacations that we like, and we try and duplicate them. And that's what I've done for my mom with this Bananas Foster. I made this one year for Mother's Day, and she loved it. Okay, I'm gonna add just another sprinkle of salt, and then we're gonna add the bananas. We're about ready. It doesn't take long. You're just waiting for that sugar to dissolve into the butter. Okay, have a great buttery sauce here. Stir it up a little more. We're gonna add the bananas. And then we're gonna coat the bananas in the sugar mixture. Let those start cooking. Just make sure. Don't you love it when your cell phone rings in the middle of a video presentation when you're supposed to turn it off? Oh well, that's what happens sometimes. I should have known something like that would happen. We're okay. They'll call back. All right, look at how yummy that looks. Are you ready for the fire? Now, the original recipe calls for 1/4 cup of banana liqueur. I tried that recipe. It is entirely too sweet. I don't like the flavor of banana liqueur. It's too sweet. And so it also calls for 1/4 cup of rum. This is just a medium rum, amber colored is what they call it. So instead of 1/4 cup and 1/4 cup, we just have 1/2 cup of rum. You add what you like, but for my taste, this is gonna work. All right, now, let's get ready. Hold on, I can see a little part there that we gotta stir around. The bananas. Okay, it's gonna go fast. You're gonna wanna pour the rum and then set it on fire. Are you ready? Here we go. Woo! And that's Bananas Foster. We just let the flame burn down. You're cooking off all the alcohol, so don't worry about serving this to the kids. That's so fun. That's probably the best flaming bananas I've seen yet in this recipe. You can turn off the lights at your house and make it a show for people. I'd put a pot over it, but, well, I'm a little bit afraid. Woo! If we shake that pan, the flames really go up. It's starting to die down now. Now, to serve it up, we'll bring it right over here to the counter. I'll grab my trusty spoon. Ooh, that looks really good. And we'll take a bowl. I like to put the ice cream down first. It's a little easier. And if it's soft, ooh, I'm probably gonna make a huge mess here. My sous chef Robert had to go to work, so he's not here to do the heavy lifting of the ice cream. And get a little sauce. Get another banana. Bon appetit. Bananas Foster.